see here. So today I wanted to go over with you the last set of questions from our midterm. In class we've already gone over a few so far from our multiple choice section. We will continue for the rest of the week, but I'd like to show you kind of these written out problems, if you will. So let's take a look at question number 14 here. Question 14, similar to our normal midpoint question, but this time we're trying to find one of our endpoints. To do so, we're going to use our original midpoint formula. We're going to use that x1 plus x2 divided by 2 is equal to xm, and we're going to fill in the values which were given. We happen to be, in this particular question, given our midpoint value of m as -2, 4. So we can say our midpoint -2, 4, and then we also have our endpoint, which we'll call f, as equal to 6, 1. So all we're going to basically do is go in here and drop them into the formula itself. Our midpoint values, we're going to call our xm's and our ym. So we're going to put it into this portion of our equation. Our endpoint, I normally find it's usually easier, visually speaking, to see it as written down as x2, y2. We'll see here in a second. Now we're just going to drag and drop everything into our equation. First I'm going to start with our xm. We're going to have x1 plus 6 divided by 2 is equal to our xm of -2. Separately, on our right side, our ym is 4 equal to y1 plus -1, so we'll just write down -1 divided by 2. What tends to throw people off here, and I'll show in a second, but this statement here written as a fraction tends to confuse people. So sometimes people like to write it as, say, x1, say plus 6 divided by 2 is equal to -2. And then all of a sudden it becomes more familiar in terms of what our next step is because it's written in that common sequence. And this is what I try and push against for you guys, is this fact that we need to understand the logic of these questions in terms of what we need to do versus just being able to roguely complete some task set in front of us. We're going to use the skills provided to us to kind of go ahead and get through everything. So the first thing we're going to do in our equation is to cancel out that divide by 2, is we're going to multiply by 2 on both sides. And now we're just left with a nice kind of easy algebraic equation that we can do. And we're going to get a value of -10 as equal to our x1 in our formula. So let's just arbitrarily name this point we're being asked. Should be written down as g as per our question. So we're going to say -10. Our other point we're going to get is we're just going to basically do that same thing. We're going to multiply by 2, cancel it out, multiply by 2, and get 8 is equal to y1. Or what we just say is 9. So for this particular question, we get -10, 9. In your exam form, which you'll see getting back to you, as long as you got one of these 2 points, I give you 1 out of 2 points for the total question. If you got both, you get 2. So let's take a look at our next question here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at number 15. In number 15, we have some specific things that we need to consider. In the question, it reads as, in the diagram, angle or line ABO is a straight line. Find the measure of angle AOM. So when we're going through this particular one, we're going to have to take in consideration like what words may or may not be here. We have essentially a linear pair, or linear pair being angles AOR, ROM, and MOB. They all equal 180. So if we're being tasked with finding AOM, what we're going to go ahead and do is find the value of x first and then insert it into our angle AOM. and generate our answer for here. To find x, we're going to set our equation up to 180 because we have that linear pair there. Linear pairs are all equal to 180 degrees. So we're just going to add all of our individual pieces for our angles. I'm going to put it in parentheses just visually speaking to make it a little bit easier, but not a necessity. So now we're just going ahead solving for x. So we're going to combine our like values. X, 2x, and x gives us 4x. Plus 12 and 16 would be 28, equal to 180. Subtract everything out. 152 is equal to 4x. Divide by 4, so on and so forth. And we get 38 equal to x. Okay, so in our question though, we're not just solving for x. That would be, say, one of our trick questions or one of our trick options in multiple choice. What we're being tasked with specifically is finding that measure of angle AOM. And that's one of the things you can do, is particularly if you have a piece of paper in front of you, is when you're reading your question, you might want to just like circle that value that you want to find. Oftentimes what I do is put a question mark next to it. So to find the angle AOM, we're going to add the components AOR and ROM. So we're going to set up our equation as x plus 12 plus 2x plus 16, and that's going to be equal to AOM. So now we just go ahead, say 3x plus 28, drop in our value of 3 times 38, which is 142. 142 plus, 114 plus 28 gives us 142. That's going to be our answer for AOM. Once again, like, you have to make sure that you're looking first, identifying what in the diagram itself will allow you to solve for that and what in the question language does that. In the question language, it tells us it's a straight line, so we know 180. Question number 16 is one of those where it might be a little bit useful to draw a diagram potentially. So here in our question, we're told that we have point R is the midpoint of xy. Knowing we have a midpoint, we also know that xr and ry are congruent or equal to one another. So in our question, we're told xr is equal to 3n plus 1. ry or yr is equal to 16 minus 2n. And in the end of the question, we're told we're asked what is the length of segment xy. We're going to shoot for this. To get the whole length, we're going to use our rule for our midpoint, meaning that 3n plus 1 is equal to or congruent to 16 minus 2n. We're going to go ahead and solve basically for our value of n. We can then insert it into the full length, and that's going to give us xy. So if we go through here and start to do our calculations, add 2n, both sides, we get 5n. It's equal to 15, or we get 3 as our final value. All right, so we end up getting 3 equal to n. Now what we're going to do is solve for xy by adding both xr and ry together. So to do that, what we're going to look at here, do 3n plus. So we're just basically going to combine all of our values. 3n and negative 2n gives us n plus 17. So we're going to get 20 for our answer. So not too bad, not too bad. Just making sure that we're looking at that language that's in the question. Question number 17, we're told that if line U and line V are parallel, what is our value of x? First thing that we need to do in our question is consider, okay, so if U and V are parallel, what does that mean to me? What does that mean to me is I need to find and identify what angles are in the question that allow me to kind of like form some system. We can describe that angle 2x minus 4 and 10x plus 10 is corresponding since they sit in the same exact position. When we have corresponding angles in between parallel lines, we know that we have congruent angles. So now that we know we have congruent angles, we can then go ahead and set up an equation. That equation would be 12x minus 4 is equal to 10x plus 10. I'm going to go through, set everything up here, set everything up, and we get 7 as equal to x. So we look back at our question. The question's asking us what is the value of x. So bam. All right. A couple tips and tricks for you in terms of taking exams like this one that we have in front of us. This exam isn't necessarily as hard as like a Regents, but it is set up in a similar format. We have a set of multiple choice questions in the beginning and a set of kind of written response questions at the end. Whenever I take an exam like this, whenever I have any assignment just in my university classes, say, I go through, read my directions as best as I can, and the first thing I do is definitely not answer question number 1. I go ahead and I scroll through my entire exam, going through finding questions, circling or writing down the ones I do not like and the ones I do know something about. I kind of pick and choose my easy and my hard questions to try and keep that in my mind. Because what ends up happening is as we scroll down here, we end up finding out that once we get to part 2, we have questions which are worth higher value. Usually written response questions, at least in like our math class, are going to be worth slightly more. So even though it's going to take you a similar amount of steps maybe or a similar amount of time to say answer question number 15 here that we did, our linear pair, as say our vertical angle here, question 15 is worth twice as much. So you want to spend a little bit more time. And that's in terms of like beating the test, if you will. We saw this week in our do now, kind of like what choice is there to trick you. You know, you can do things on your own to try and set yourself up for success in terms of like, you know, scoring the highest you can. Part of that is having enough time to answer the questions with more value. So some people like to start with part 2. Personally, I find it a little bit better to knock off a few easy multiple choice questions that I see, like here, like just a definition of a segment, go through, answer that, maybe identifying the vertical angle value. It's a pretty quick question. Get your mind kind of started and set for the test, and then, you know, go beat it. Yeah. All right, so until next time, hope you have a nice Wednesday, nice day, nice afternoon. If you go outside, please wear a mask. The United States is drastically increasing its number of cases. Don't be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution. All right, have a nice day. Bye.